Hello, writers. Come write with me. My name is Michaela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Michaela. I'm very excited to have you on my channel, so don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. I give you a chapter by reading. You send me a chapter. Write with Michaela. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to writewithmichaela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video and in the description below. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters. All chapters are writing prompts read on the channel, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is PG-13, so if you're under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. This story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last stories and writing prompts we've heard. The title of this story is Elementals, and today we are reading chapter 10. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated earlier and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific. Now let's start. Elementals, Chapter 10, Going Home. Ikani turned north to head in the taller grasses. Started Sarge. Ikani turned back and Sarge told him that he was changing directions, and Ikani explained that the low patch was where he turned. Sarge shook his head to himself, and he followed after the gnome. He hated it when his officers gave directions like, turn right after the second McDonald's. But a low patch of grass was something else. He would never find that turn again. After a few steps, he realized that in his eagerness to get home, he skipped a whole slew of safety protocols. He knew some of that was due to the gnome's short stature, but that was a dangerous assumption. Sarge caught up with the gnome and struck up a conversation to get a feel for the personality. He wanted to learn his name and some other basic information. Emery had scouts in several directions, but then the ground started shaking, and several of his men jerked around and then exclaimed the giant was coming. They took off running different directions. The horses leapt over the rope enclosure, and they started running away. Emery knew about the giant, but he didn't fear the giant. He knew the High Lord said to just leave the giant alone. But then he saw the giant. But then he saw the giant. Emery tilted his head back to look up to the great height. The giant was taller than some trees, and the giant was saying something in his booming voice, but Emery didn't understand. The giant bent down and picked up Emery, and Emery felt himself get a little woozy from the noxious smell. He restrained himself to keep his consciousness. The giant shook Emery, said something again, but it wasn't a language that Emery knew. After the giant shook Emery a few more times, he dropped Emery on and walked on. Emery hit the ground hard, but he quickly rolled out of the way of the walking giant. Emery watched the giant, and the giant went between the trees, but some of the trees, the giant just swung his arm at those trees, and those trees fell down. Emery wasn't sure. Let's see if I can get this computer to behave. Emery wasn't sure why the High Lord let the creature roam around, but he knew it would probably take an army to bring him down. Emery sighed and thought perhaps the giant didn't disrupt the High Lord's plans enough for him to use an army for that. At least not until he killed all the elementals. Emery thought on that a bit. He also didn't understand why the High Lord kept the 3 elementals alive, because from what he knew, it would take all 5 to start the machine for the shields over the cities. Emery sighed and then started shouting orders to those around him to gather the men and horses back to the gnomes' village. Ikani had been speaking with Sarge, but then he heard a loud noise, and Ikani just shook his head and started walking and started talking under his breath. That was when Sarge realized that Ikani didn't speak English as a native language. After a few minutes, Sarge asked what was going on, and Ikani explained about the friendship with the giant and how he assumed their village wasn't back yet. Ikani then turned northeast to head more towards the portal area. Sarge just followed along. He didn't know what he would tell his wife or anyone else for that matter, but it felt like a dream. He might just go with that narrative. He chuckled at all the movies Alex had told them about to help her with her magic. Suddenly, Sarge stopped short and thought about something. He kind of looked back. "You know coming?" Sarge gave a brief description of his job and of the video footage that he saw and the man they never found. He told the man's name, but Ikani didn't know the name of the elementals. Finally, they arrived at the area for Ikani to set up the portal. Sarge stayed back and watched Ikani set things up. Once Ikani finished and said Sarge could go through, Sarge thanked him and then headed through a portal that he couldn't see. He did hear a lot of noise behind him, but he just wanted to be home. When he stepped through, things were a little surreal, and he noticed right away the differences in the woods, including going from daylight to dark, and the smell was different. Here he smelled more pine. Things were just like Alex had described. He also felt he was in his normal clothes, but he didn't know for sure since he couldn't see too well. He looked around to gain his bearings in the dark, and then suddenly there were 7 gnomes around him. Sarge looked through all the faces until he saw and recognized Ikani's face. Ikani held up a talisman to show that he had a piece of the portal. Sarge started to ask questions, but he noticed the gnomes were ducking behind bushes and peering in the direction of the portal. Sarge turned and stared. He didn't know what to expect. Ikani stood shaking beside him. He was clutching the talisman. After a few minutes, Sarge asked Ikani what happened. And Ikani explained that the High Lord's men had found his friends and they were chasing them. He said he didn't want the High Lord's men to go through the portal, but he also didn't want to be in the woods alone with those men. So he put his hand on the talisman before he stepped through, and then he pulled his hand through. He hadn't known if it would work. Once he said that, the other gnomes came out, and they just started speaking with Ikani in their language. And Sarge knew they had some concern or the other, but he turned and headed out of the woods. He pulled his cell phone out of his pocket and turned it on. He had signal, so he called the station and used his GPS to find the nearest road. Then he used his phone as a flashlight. Thankfully, he had turned his phone off when the horse told Alex it wasn't a dream, and now he still had battery. He briefly shone the light against himself and found that, yes, he was in his normal clothes. That would be one fewer things to explain. Ikani ran to catch up to him, and soon all 7 gnomes were around him. Sarge certainly didn't know what to think or to say. As they were walking along, Alex was deep in thought. She had already been a prisoner in this world twice, and she had no loyalty to this world. So why hadn't she gone with Sarge? Then she thought that Sarge had said 3 months. She sighed to herself. But this was a 3-month mission, whatever it was. She glanced at Michael's to make sure they were still in the magical clothes because she felt something happened with the magic. And thankfully, Michael's was in the magical clothes. Then he suddenly stopped. "What?" she asked. He motioned ahead. "When someone told us a larger town, they weren't kidding. That is huge." He looked to Calvert. "Did you tell us? Maybe Sanchez told me. I don't know, but..." Alex didn't like how he just stopped talking, and knew that she needed to fill in the blanks. Some of what she filled in was from their conversation before they entered Sumner. Michaels had said that he deliberately went into towns controlled by enemies just to refresh supplies, and he would look for allies. With the larger size, that meant there would be more of both sides to watch for. They hadn't really been talking as they walked, but now they even quieted down their thoughts as they watched the large walled city come into view, and seeing a large group of people entering, relieved of both Alex and Michaels. There were several guards on both sides of the doors, and both inside and outside. Before they arrived, Calvert had quietly told them to walk in like they knew where they were going. Asking questions or for directions would be suspicious. Alex saw Michaels out of the corner of her eye, and she knew that he was on high alert, just as she was herself. With what little they knew of this world, they knew things were dangerous, but not knowing whom to trust made things even worse. Alex hadn't wanted to split up, but Calvert had advised it, and she saw all the people dispersing after they got within the gates. The only ones staying together were parents with children in tow. Aunt Stelnar landed on the plateau high in the mountains. As she looked around, she had stopped before mid-morning to recharge her magic and to add the extra charm. And then she had stopped again when the unscalable mountains came into view. And Stelnar mused to herself that the mountains were considered to be unscalable, so that was why her sister stayed protected all these years. Each stop had taken a while because she had to recharge. Granted, she used her magic every day, and granted it was easier to use here and not as much of a strain, but the spell to conceal her was a very high-powered spell, and she had flown from the last bit, becoming more and more dizzy and nauseous, so she had stopped. She had tried to gauge how much she would need to get to the plateau that she knew was there, and she had made it. Now she just needed to walk up the trail a little way, and she would be under her sister's spell to conceal her whereabouts. Aunt Stelnar changed the broom back to a pen, and she pulled out a few crackers to settle her stomach. She began walking up the steep incline, and when she got to the protection line, she realized that the protection was not there. This raised Aunt Stelnar's alarm, so she quickened her pace as much as she was able, but she couldn't go far before she had to sit and recharge her magic. "I need to stop," said Sylvain, as he flew closer to a tree, pulled himself onto a branch, and the other two could see he was shaking. They didn't think he had lost too much blood, for that to be the reason. Trakant and Dosner guided their brooms closer and also pulled themselves in the tree. For the moment, the brooms floated in the air. Sylvain just threw up and then started slipping off the branch. Trakant leaned over and caught him and pushed him back in the tree. That's when he realized that he didn't feel so well either. "Try to let your broom land on the ground and we'll rest." Dosner threw up, but at least he didn't start slipping because Trakant couldn't reach him. The brooms dropped, but Trakant wasn't sure if it was because they ran out of magic or if somehow his suggestion enabled the brooms to land. Either way, the brooms were below them on the forest floor. Trakant said, "Are you too dizzy?" They nodded. Trakant decided they would stay in the trees until they felt better. He wasn't sure how far they had traveled, but at least he didn't hear any sounds of troops anywhere near them. He also didn't hear any birds or other animals. He was glad. Alex just strolled through the city and looked at all the sights. She didn't want it to seem like her alert was up, but it was. And she could see people stare at her. Still, not once did she think of witch Eleanor's words about her going to Sisisnar to claim her throne, because those thoughts were too preposterous. When she found some little children running through the streets and playing, she just smiled and watched them for a while. As she watched the children, she observed where people were going and where they came from. She continued down the street and entered a large building that many people went in. The best she could tell was that there were some official offices that took complaints of money for fines on the left. But there was also what she would call a library on the right. She wasn't sure what they would call it here, but that's what she called it. She walked in, and several people behind a counter glanced at her. And one person was stamping things just before the person he was helping scooped up some books and headed out. So Alex concluded that people could check out books, but she didn't know how to get a library card. And she didn't think it was a bookstore because she didn't see them exchanging any type of money or coins or anything else. She saw other people browsing the books, so she did too. People, for the most part, left her alone, except trying to get past her on an aisle, so she read a little here and there. Some of the words seemed like English, and some were a little off, like color was color. C-O-L-O-R was C-O-L-O-U-R. And mayor was mayor. M-A-Y-O-R was M-A-Y-O-U-R. Some differences were a little bit more than that, but Alex felt she could understand things. She entered an aisle marked history/royalty. So she started reading a few passages in the various books as she made her way down the aisle. Okay, what's it doing to me? It just all of a sudden made my script teeny tiny. Okay. Then at the end of the aisle, she saw a man in gorgeous flowing purple robes. Alex tried not to be obvious about watching, but the man pulled a book down, opened it, appeared to read a little, and then he put it back. Only he didn't push it all the way back in. He looked straight at Alex. Straight in Alex's eyes, and slightly raised his eyebrows. And then he walked around the end of the bookshelf to another aisle. Alex didn't know if there were cameras or other eyes watching, so she casually made her way to the book and pulled it down. That's when Alex realized that she wasn't as observant as she normally was, because the man had stuffed something in the book. It was paper wrapped around something. Alex took the paper and stuffed it into her soft corset. Something she didn't feel accustomed to doing, but the clothes she was wearing gave her easy access. Then she read the passage. Her heart started thudding so much that it sounded like a bass drum in her ears. The passage basically told her where she needed to go. Not like X marks the spot, but some things to look for to follow the trail to a hidden portal to a room. It talked about activating a shield. It also mentioned the 5 elementals, but the elemental for this area would need to activate her part of the shield first, because although the land was in the shape of a star, the main part of the land was a pentagon, and Sisisnar was the main point of the pentagon, although it was the southern point of the pentagon. Alex briefly thought to herself that they had correctly assumed that the top of the map had been north. Alex could feel herself shaking. She read the passage again. She didn't want her knees to buckle, but at this point, she could no longer pass things off as being a dream. She wished she could check out the book, but there were several problems with that, and only one of them had to do with the library card that she didn't have. How would that alert people, allies or enemies, to who she was or what she had to do? Alex carefully slid the book back on the shelf. She pulled a couple more books off of shelves and pretended to read a passage here or there, but her mind was on what she had read, and she was still shaking. Yes, she was a detective, and she had a lot of specialized training, but none of that had prepared her for this. One passage she had read earlier was about the betrayal of the royal families, so how could she ever know ally or spy? She had protected people high up in companies before. She had helped find kidnapped victims, save their lives. But now she had to protect herself from an unknown enemy in an unknown land. And Sarge had left her. Granted, he had left her with an optimal partner. Michaels was the only one in their office who had served in the Marines, and therefore the only one to go into totally unknown territory without any field notes. Suddenly it struck her that the gnome had said that Sarge didn't belong here in this land, and she did. But the gnome hadn't said anything about Michaels. Was that just because no one asked? She didn't know, but she was glad Michaels was in this city somewhere. At least she knew he was on her side. She was on a different aisle, and her hand was resting on a book when a voice asked her, "May I help you?" The voice startled her, and she didn't know if she was taking the book off the shelf or putting it back. Alex slowly turned and looked at the librarian. She knew she had jumped, so she had to cover that. "Oh, wow, you startled me. I didn't know all this history was here. It seems a very rich history." She started to say that she might have to become a history buff, but decided that less was more. She didn't want to say something like she had said, "Flick your wrist" to Eleanor and cause suspicion. "I don't think I've seen you here before," stated the librarian. Alex wasn't sure if he was trying to ease the tension or if he was accusing. Should she say where they had come from? She decided that Eleanor had placed a tracker on her, so she didn't want to say that. She wished beyond anything that her recipe could list books instead of ingredients. She pulled out the paper and told the librarian that she was actually supposed to be researching a few things, and she was sorry to disturb him. The librarian swiftly took the folded paper out of her hand and opened it up. Alex's heart almost exploded. The librarian nodded, handed the list back. "The first book is 3 or 4 aisles away. Do you have a stamp for yourself or from your mentor, or are you reading here?" "I was reading here," stated Alex. The librarian told her to follow him, and he showed her the first book on her list. Alex didn't know what miraculous thing had happened for the paper to list an actual book, because there was no way for her to know that. But she didn't protest. She took the book and let him show her to some chairs for reading. Alex sat down and started reading. It amazed her that the book talked about poisonous water and how to test water before consuming it, and what you could add for different types of poison to counteract the poison, including poison added to food. Alex was making mental notes and had several fingers stuck in different passages when the librarian showed back up. He stood very near her and waited until she looked up. He had a lap plate, an inkwell, a feather pen, along with some parchment. He also had the form she needed to apply for a stamp to check out books in the future. Alex thanked him, Before the librarian left, he asked if she wanted him to gather any more of the books on the list, or if the one would be enough to read for today. Alex told him the one would be enough, and then he left. Alex remembered her college days, even though they seemed very distant to her at the moment. But she remembered taking notes and even a few strategies. Of course, she had taken notes on a laptop and had not written things down, but she knew how to write. She reminded herself to spell words the way she saw them and not how she interpreted them. Alex didn't know how long she had read through the book, but she decided that she needed to move on. As she was closing things down and folding up her notes, the librarian came over and took the items he had lent, and he promised to return the book to its proper place. Alex thanked him and headed out. As she was heading out of the building, she saw something labeled as water services. So she decided to check it out, and much to her relief, it was a multi-stalled bathroom. She entered a stall. She felt this might be the best place to look at the small bundle in her corset. She hoped that privacy in a bathroom transcended to this world. Although, come to think of it, in Russia there was a high window that could see into bathrooms, so the government could know what people read. She sighed and looked up for a window. Didn't see any. But that didn't mean there weren't cameras. She didn't know what a camera would look like in this world, since a water well was like an online meeting. She didn't know if you would see other people's faces in the water well like you would in a Zoom meeting, or if you would just hear them like a phone conference. She didn't know enough about this world and hoped there were no cameras or spies in the bathroom as she pulled out the bundle. What she found was a short, cryptic note and something she thought of as possible cash. She didn't know what type of money they had in this world, but the paper bills had numbers and pictures of different royalty. Alex shuffled through the stack until she came to a picture that had High Lord as a label. She thought, now she knew what the main enemy looked like. But as a detective, she knew that a lot of times the high-up boss was really hard to get to. She put the cash in a pouch, and then she read the note. Lay low, make do supplement, follow signs. And that was it. Alex assumed lay low was supposed to look like her name, but it was probably lay low. The supplement, she assumed, was the cash, and the signs were hopefully from the passages she had read. Alex sighed to herself. Obviously, she needed to find a hotel or an inn to stay in, and she had no way to judge how much those cost. She dropped the note in the hole, not knowing if there were truly water services to flush things, because she didn't see any handles. Alex headed out on the street and started looking for a place to bunk down for the night, or some food at a food stand. She wished she knew where Michael's was, or even Calvort, but she would do her best to lay low and look for signs. Lieutenant Stellers pulled off the road onto the grass and let Sarge in. Sarge opened the door to the back seat for the gnomes to climb in. When he climbed in, Stellers looked at him questioningly. Sarge shook his head and closed his eyes. So Stellers headed to the station. He told Sarge that he had called Sarge's wife, and she would meet them there to take him home, unless he wanted to go to the hospital. Sarge said, I might need a McDonald's, or whatever is open at this hour. Lieutenant Stellers understood. Okay, writers, that is the end of Chapter 10. Leave a comment on if you could use magic. What symptoms do you think you would have when you used it the first time, or for a long time the first time? Would you be dizzy, like Trakant and those in his group? Would you see spots? What do you think? Leave a comment on how Sarge, a trained detective, skipped a whole slew of safety steps. And comment if you've skipped safety steps for some things in your life. Sometimes hindsight is 20/20, and sometimes we are skipping steps that we don't know that we should have paid attention to, and we learn those later. But sometimes we don't know the safety steps, and we skip them. Sometimes we do know the safety steps, and we just, that's not important. I've done those safety steps 20 times, and nothing happened. I'm just being paranoid, and I skip them. So I don't think Sarge was being paranoid. He just wanted to go home. Leave a comment on if you like going to the library. If so, what sections do you visit? You can also leave a comment on if you go to bookstores instead, or 2 comments if you do both, and the sections you visit in the bookstore. Join me Tuesday for some jargon and a down soldier. Join me Wednesday for our book club discussion, 1984. Join me Friday for chapter 11 of Elementals. Visit my website, by Michaela, and read some character bios. If you read some, leave a comment on which ones you have read. All of your comments will help us start conversations and build our community. Keep all comments respectful. Remember, someone else's perspective can help you with your writing. It could be a different character, because we see our world through our lens, but another comment can kind of help us to pivot and look at life through a different lens, or look at a scene through a different lens. It can help you with your writing. I remember I had a friend, a neighbor, and I called her Nana. So she's like a second mother. And I gave her my story. It was like The King's Daughter. And so she read one of these scenes. And I always saw the scene from Tick. And he was a halfling. And he loved to play pranks, and he was just joyous about doing this. And she saw the scene from Minos' perspective, the dwarf. The dwarf was, he was the one that Tick played the prank on. Tick played the prank, and they had to run away from this imaginary enemy that Tick told Minos about. And they're running and running and running and running. And finally, Minos can't run anymore, and he's like, okay, keep going, or go hide or something. And he's looking around for a place to hide himself. And so Tick just starts laughing. Okay, well, I'm looking at it because it's a prank, and it's funny and stuff. Nana was like, Tick done Minos wrong. He should be ashamed of that. There was no need for that. And so she totally saw Minos' side. And so that's what I'm talking about. She had a perspective. She saw the same scene I did. She didn't think it was funny. She didn't think the prank was funny. And she took up for Minos. Hook, line, sinker, everything. She was all for Minos. And I was just laughing with Tick. So, both of them were my characters, and I could see both points easily. But I wrote to put in some comedy and everything. So use somebody else's perspective to help you with your writing. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and the bell so you can continue to write together with me. And other people will have a higher chance of finding this video and this channel. Since your likes will push the video out to a greater audience. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, please share it with them. This is Michaela with Write with Michaela. Bye for now.